Hey y'all, it's Melissa here at Twin Oaks Family Farm. Thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel, Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. We've got a fun video today taking a look at the Cornish Rock Cross meat chicks. They are in their second day here at our little farm, and they are in production for poultry meat specifically. But when we first get them here, they are super cute. The cute stage doesn't last long in Cornish Rock Cross meat chicks, but we try to provide them excellent quality of life throughout production. And so we're going to just take a look at them and talk through some of the things that we are watching, looking for, and managing for at this point in production. So we'll have these in production until about April, I believe 16th is their processing date. So we have from now to then to start grow and finish them into homegrown top quality poultry, and every day does matter a great deal. So let's take a look. So we actually have them in a barn, and rather than set up a temporary brooder with our chicks, our management solution for this stage of the process is to just make basically a walk-in working brooder space in our barn. The reason we do that is because we have a preference for not having to move them from one barn to another barn during production. We also have a preference for really minimal handling of them physically, as far as picking them up, carrying them around. A lot of that is to prevent damaging the feathering, because if we kind of damage it where it grows out of the skin, it actually can create a wound on the bird. So all through production, we're mindful of that. It also just minimizes stress on the birds, because no matter how gently we try to handle them, anytime, yes, putting this 2 cents in there, anytime we do handle them, it does inadvertently stress the birds. So we really try to minimize that. So like I said, with those preferences, we've kind of come to the point where our solution is to just make a working brooder inside their space. Now, if it's a bigger group than this, we have sometimes started them like in a similar space that we're in now, with a temporary wall, like is right here that we're seeing in the camera there. We'll try to zoom in on those chicks there. And then we actually could just remove that wall very easily by lifting it out of place and letting the birds have then the entire building. And so what we find ends up happening here is that where these heat lamps are will provide probably an optimum ambient temperature for these birds, and it will stay consistent because it's something we can watch, observe, monitor, and gauge, and adjust as needed. So we can keep where these heat lamps are providing supplemental warmth at a steady temperature, so that even if the outdoor ambient temperature becomes comfortable and they choose to leave where the supplemental warmth is, that's always a space they can come back to that's consistent in temperature. And we can plan their feeders and their waters there in that space where the supplemental warmth is, so that they always know where to go for their food and for their water. And so basically, all that to say, what ends up happening is where we plan the supplemental warmth to sort of plan some temperature control, that in effect becomes a confinement of ambient environmental temperature that will, if it doesn't keep them right there, will bring them back to there. So we do kind of confine the space somewhat, though. We have 126 chicks here. The building is only 30 foot by 30 foot, but they certainly don't need 30 foot by 30 foot. And with meat chicks, even from the beginning, you do kind of keep in mind, we don't want them running all their energy off. We do want them moving, we do want them keeping their legs strong, but we also don't want them running off everything that we feed into them. We want them to have that energy available for their body to convert to meat. Feed to meat conversion and efficiency is what Cornish rock cross meat birds are known for overall. So we do kind of want to confine them. And actually, the size space we're in here, which, there's a bunch of the water. The size space we're in here, which just gauging approximately 20 foot by 15 foot, this should be enough for this 126 birds to finish in. So we will watch, how they're behaving under the heat lamps. And today got up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So, they depended a little less on the heat lamps. We also had strong sunlight. You can see that group of birds over there. We still got a little band of sunlight streaming in, so they're attracted to that. So that's another thing that we're monitoring, not only temperature, but also light intensity. And actually, when we're done recording here, I'll be closing that door up. So for our purposes, these birds are 2 days old. They're probably real time closer to 3 days old, because they would have hatched like March 10th on a Sunday. March 10th, 2024. They moved in March 11th, 2024. We're recording this March 12th, 2024. And it's about 6:30 in the evening. So we're getting close to when we're going to be closing up buildings. And that will even up the light intensity in here. We won't have, a band of sunlight streaming in. We'll only have an overhead light that's on. And there's a little tip with that. We do leave an overhead light on at least the first about 3 days round the clock with them. It just gives them that much more opportunity to get solid about where to find their feed, get solid about where to find their water. Also, again, we're coming back to the premise that these are meat birds. So we want to get a good start on them taking in the food. We want them to find the food quickly when we move them in. We want them to continue to consume the food. So we leave our food free choice in here for the birds round the clock. As they actually continue to grow, we will continue to leave food in the pen for them round the clock. And maybe we'll do a video just on that. There's people on one side of the issue that meat birds should be fed 12 hours food is provided, 12 hours food is taken away. And there's other people like us that say just leave the food in there because they turn into piranhas if they don't have it for 12 hours. And then it's really a nightmare to get food in there to them when it's time to provide the food again. So ambient temperature, we're keeping it steady under the lights. What I want to show y'all is a good example of how we want the birds to use the lights. We don't really have a great example right now, other than that none of them are using it in a poor way that would indicate to us we don't have the height adjusted correctly. But we are kind of seeing, if y'all can kind of see how basically circles kind of form just at the edge of the strongest part of the beam of light that's coming down from those lamps. So we're basically targeting heat from those heat bulbs in those lamps down toward where the birds are living, down in this case on the floor of their building. And so when they utilize those heat lamps, they'll basically form up a circle at the outer edge of that strongest part of the beam, and that's where they are utilizing the light. And if they form that circle and stay in a single layer, we know that the height is well adjusted of the lamp and that they are getting a benefit of that supplemental warmth and that it feels good to them. And we trust them with their behavior to indicate to us what feels good and what doesn't. And if they're piling on top of each other, they're indicating to us we're not getting enough warmth, and they're indicating to us as managers, you need to do something about this for me. So we monitor Ambient temperature, not necessarily by measuring temperature, but by observing behavior. And so what are these crazy chickens doing? So we might call them chicken zoomies, but what is behind the behavior? As a flock manager, that's what we're looking at. What's behind the behavior? Okay, so that's the other thing I mentioned that we watch is light intensity. What's behind the behavior here is the light is changing. And so we're still getting, we already mentioned that strong band of light coming in there. The door just waved a little bit there behind me. I heard it kind of bang. And so it affected how much light was getting in, and the birds knew that. And so when that happens with chicks, when there's a strong change in the light, you're going to see reaction from them. So that brings me to the third thing that we watch and monitor and sometimes compel in the chicks. We want to see them responsive. We want to see them move when they're approached. We want to see them respond to changes in their environment in the intensity of lighting. So actually when we saw like that mass chicken zoomie, that's really a good thing, because actually when we come into the pen to check them, and that happens frequently, but when we come in to check them, sorry, we stepped across the lighting there, we'll actually kind of walk very carefully amongst them, and we actually want to see them move. We want to see a little bit of that scatter response, and the scatter response like that is usually really strong in chicks. The scatter response will lessen as they get older and as they become more familiar with their handlers and more familiar with the routine. But even as they get older, we should always see responsiveness, because if we don't, we probably have a bird that isn't well. And so then if we don't see responsiveness, even on an individual level, in a single bird, we'll be checking into that single bird and seeing what's going on. So other than that, we're also monitoring feeders and waters. So at this point, we have, I think, 7 waters in here, so 7 gallons of water. We actually haven't had to fill them yet. They will probably empty those maybe overnight tonight. We'll be freshening those in the morning. We want them to consume them, and if they don't get totally consumed, we'll dump out the old or repurpose it, like put it into flowers or plants or something to water them. But we'll give them fresh water. We're also watching the feed. When we moved them in, we let them settle in for a couple of hours before we put food down. And then we put the food down in these trays, and they have lids, but we don't put the lids on it first because we want them to find that food. We want them to eat that food. We're always keeping in mind, about the meat birds. And as we're looking at these birds, even now, like I'm kind of assessing, have they eaten? Well, let's, like this one right there. So under its beak, right in front of its wings, like at its chest, there's kind of a little lump there. So I can tell that bird has eaten. I can be reassured that bird has been eating, because that's where kind of the crop is, where the food kind of gets stored and the bird's body begins to digest it. So we look for that in all the birds as individuals to make sure that they're eating. So I think I said we do leave the light on, overhead light on, about the first 3 days to make sure that they're finding the food, and then we'll evaluate the flock and see, do we need to put them on a lighting program? Do we need to have some lights off time to slow them down on eating, or do we need to keep the lights on 24/7 to keep them moving along on eating? Kind of see how the flock develops. Okay, so before we wrap it up, we're going to actually show y'all something else that's kind of neat. Normally in this barn, there is only meat birds, but right at the moment, and see, there's another good example. There's 3 in a line, the middle one, that's kind of semi-standing, semi-sitting down, now sitting down. I can tell it's eaten recently. So, but anyway, normally, and this one too. Whoop. That's good. We want to see scatter response, but we see that one's eaten, so that's a good thing. That crop is full and kind of pouched out there. So normally, oh dear, I'll show you, oh dear. Normally there's only meat chicks in here. At the moment, we also have a group of egg chicks. So these meat chicks, 2 days old, almost 3 days old. The egg chicks we have in here are 2 weeks old. They're not supposed to be up on the middle wall. This is always why we really don't keep them together, because the egg chicks can kind of become a problem to the meat chicks. So I don't know. So we were hoping we could keep these egg chicks in here. Woo! Maybe another couple weeks, but that may not work out, because ultimately, if these chicks come over here to the meat chick side and are flying around and flitting around, ultimately they create a little stress for the meat birds. And that is one thing we've learned over time raising meat birds. If you allow stress to be created in your flock, it impacts their heart health and it impacts their rate of growth. So we want to keep their hearts healthy, and we want to maximize, the meat birds. I'm trying to find it. Maximize the meat bird's rate of growth. So we don't want, let me try to zoom back out. So we don't want a little group of egg birds stressing them out. So we'll figure it out. But anyway, they're a cute little group of egg birds, but they're much more agile than the meat birds, and these are doing really well. But this is what we would consider, normal growth. And what we'll see with the meat birds is that they have a real rapid growth, and they end up, size-wise, they end up catching these birds in no time, within 2 weeks. But they don't have the upward mobility. The meat birds don't have the upward mobility that these birds will have. So, yeah, so this may not last as long as we hoped it would. So anyway, but hey, thanks for joining us. We sure appreciate it. So, for our purposes, day 2 with the meat chicks, 126 of them, and it's a big accomplishment that all 126 of them survived the first 24 hours plus here. So we are off to a good start. We did have a big temperature swing when they moved in. It was about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. They got here first thing in the morning, business hours, instead of, we kind of expected them mid-afternoon. And so it was cooler, than we expected when we moved them in. We did have the lamps on, but they went from 100 in a box, and all that body heat to having to adjust under these heat lamps. So, hopefully that temperature swing wasn't too much, because that can also start a stress impact that we see the effects of later on. But we've got a good start, and we're going to hope for the best, and we hope that y'all will continue to join us. So normally our videos aren't quite this long, but we just get in here around the meat birds and we take our time. We want to keep things calm, and we want to keep them well and provide excellent quality of life for them. So it's coming on close to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, rural Southeast Ohio, USA, and we're going to be closing their building up, straighten up their feed trays, make sure the water trays are clean for them. See, they're calming down. They've been up, they've been active, they've eaten, and got a drink and manure, and then that's what they're going to do. They're going to settle down. So we're going to, like I said, get feed trays straightened up and close the barn doors. And we'll leave the overhead light on again tonight before we evaluate if we want to use a variation in the overhead lighting program for them. But they're really, really doing good. So thanks, y'all. We sure appreciate you. Let us know what you think about chicken and meat birds and egg birds, and how you think they should be started. And we love to read your feedback. So hope that y'all are all doing well and that you're having a great week. So we'll check back in with you again in about 24 hours. We'll check back in with you March 13th, 2024 with this vlog.